to the races.
All right.
So it looks like we're live. So yeah, so I'm here with my friend Lance Conley, and we've been actually talking for probably maybe a little over a year now. And it actually started back when, because Don Preston he blocked a bunch of people on his YouTube channel because someone had made the claim that Lance Conley was operating under a number of different names. Yeah, I told you about that. So he actually blocked a bunch of people, and he was going to block me. And I told him, I says, hey, I don't know who Lance Conley is.
Right.
So that's when I contacted you, and we kind of had a discussion, and we got together a few weeks ago. We tried to record a podcast, but it didn't work out. We couldn't get any sound. So we're back here again. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I wanted to just talk to you, I guess, about the state of the union, or actually I should say the state of the disunion of the hyper-preterist movement. What's going on? You're in the trenches a lot more than I am. I'm not on Facebook or Twitter or anything, so you see a lot more than I do. What's going on out there?
I mean, I've gotten blocked just as much as you do, so I've been. I've noticed though, like the movement has gotten very like they still all believe Matthew 24 and all that, but they're going into like all sorts of stuff, like Max King's crew is going towards like the New Age stuff, universalism, all of that. Like all religions are equal, mostly because like Max King probably doesn't think that the Bible is like legitimate anymore, because he's taken this whole approach with like, Matthew 24, like, well, if it's wrong, it's, I mean, he's listened to the atheist Bible critics so much that he's not even thinking straight, honestly. So, like him and his sons and all that. But then you get like Don Preston. He's talking about like Jesus doesn't have a body anymore, and like he's making up stuff like out the wazoo. Everything he says, like he pulls out of his butt. So, like, I mean, he's saying like Satan is the old covenant now, and that makes no sense. Like he says he's got the Hebraic mindset of the Second Temple Judaism, and like if you've actually studied that, like Satan is not he's not the old covenant of Judaism. Like that would be complete blasphemy, actually, to say that the old covenant is Satan. Like that's like actually ridiculous, because he's trying to say like since Satan means the accuser, that the law accuses you, I guess, but it like that's not at all like what the Torah is. Good. Like Paul says the Torah is good. Jesus says the Torah is good. Like everybody says the Torah is good. So it's not Satan. Like that's a ridiculous idea. Like,
yeah, I think that's what Robert Townley said. I think he said Satan was the Jews, the apostate Jews, and when they were destroyed, Satan was destroyed. It's that same mindset, and that's coming from a lack of demonstrable fulfillment, where you can't show that something was clearly fulfilled, that something came to pass, and so you've got to, reimagine that language. And I remember we were talking a couple of weeks ago about Robert Barron, the Catholic apologist, how he defined Gnosticism as that sort of where they take that language, they use Orthodox language, but they empty out that language of its contents, and then they import their own language in there. So he's using all this Orthodox terminology, but he's divested the language of all of its meaning, and he's imported his own meaning in there. So yeah, I see that. I actually was at his channel today. I think he's like, isn't he like trying to sell an app now?
Oh, probably. He's constantly trying to sell stuff.
I saw him try to. I mean, there's a few out there that are doing that. There's like Doug Wilson, and there's a few others. What they're doing now is they're starting to sell apps, which is like all of their books and all of their, in one-stop shop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's trying to sell stuff, because that's what he's always done. It's always like, buy my new book. Everything's the same that I've always written, but it's a different book now. Huh? Yeah, and it's like you read it and you're like, okay, like I could have just bought his first one, and I would have gotten all this mostly. Right. He's got like 5 books that have a little bit of different things, but it's always about the same thing. It's like 70 AD, after 24, I'm gonna make 700 videos on this one topic. Like, yeah, no wonder your church failed.
And I got a dog barking. I don't know why. I'm gonna put this on mute. But anyways, I was going to ask you. So, what do you think is the future of the movement from what you're seeing out there?
My personal belief about the future of full preterism is that I'm sure until Jesus comes back, somebody will try to push it, but I think at least for this movement in particular, like it's going to go like Oneida, which Oneida is a full preterist cult that was in the 1830s, and it ended up like they were like into like free sex, all this other weird stuff, like because they believed that since things happened already, like you were not in marriage anymore, so they were like, "Ooh, it's free. You can have sex with anybody's wife. They actually share people's wives and husbands, and they had the kids too. Like the kids would have to once they turned like 15 or something, they would have to get with the old people to practice, and yeah, so gross stuff, like very gross. But I actually do see full preterism going towards that because William Bell, he's decided that he's hanging out with all these Black Hebrew Israelite people, and they're like all for polygamy, polyandry, and like all of his disciples, William Bell's disciples, are all like, yeah, you can get with like 5 wives, you can, the more the merrier, and all this really bizarre like stuff that nobody would. I mean, like Paul says, if you're going to be a teacher, you get 1 man and 1 woman. Like it's 1 man and 1 woman. That's it. Like that's what he says. The Christian church was very strict about marriage, and they were stricter than what Judaism at that time was, and what like Romans were actually, because Romans would be like, you can only have 1 wife, but you can. Well, actually, they did have multiple wives sometimes. It just depended on your the caste system. But like yeah, I think the future is like there's some that are going to go universalist, like always. Some are going down the Israel only path where they're like anti-universalism. Nobody gets saved after 70 AD. That's going to die off because they're just going to become atheists, and that's, who cares? Like they're going to be trolls. Like that's all it is. Also, like I see like the day that Don Preston does finally croak, and the day that some of them do, there's not going to be any there's not going to be anybody there because they're getting like Don Preston gets like the most views out of anybody. Max King's going to be dead in like maybe not even 10 years because he's like 90 or something. Like nobody talks about Max King much anymore. They try to put him on the wayside. Don Preston's going to, hopefully he'll repent before he croaks, but like if he doesn't, like it is what it is, and they'll probably spread some of this stuff. Like Michael Miano will probably still say the same stuff that Don Preston says, but he's got like a church of like 12 people, so I don't think it's going to matter that much. But basically, once Don goes, their movement's going to go like really downhill from there, because somebody's going to try to fill the void, but it's going to be like Holger Neubauer or like John Watson, and John Watson's like teaching the Earth is flat now, and Holger Neubauer is like teaching Christadelphian heresies. So they're like, and Michael Miano does this too, but they're saying like Jesus had a carnal mind, and like when he was in the desert, he was fighting his carnal mind. He wasn't fighting Satan. And like it's just gonna get to the point where it's gonna be like Don is like this one, he's like the conservative guy in the bunch that's like holding it down, because if they all go against him, they'll look like idiots, because he'll just go, because Don likes to, if somebody goes against him, he's gonna go like make like 700 videos about them, and then the whole community will be like, well, if Don said it, then we're gonna reject you. Like if Michael Miano said, Don, you're wrong, and makes a big fuss about it, Don will be like, no, you're wrong. 700 videos later, Michael Miano is exercised from the Facebook community, right? And I'm not. I feel like I'm bashing Michael Miano too much, but like he's actually not that bad, but like just I feel like that's what's gonna happen. Like once he dies off, the movement's gonna die pretty much, and maybe Daniel Rogers takes over it, but I don't know. It's like it is what it is. I don't think that it's gonna last. I don't even think like I don't even think some of the full preterists that are currently in the movement right now are gonna stay in it. Because like I think it's like me and Sam Frost were talking about it, and it's like the usual full preterists last about 5 years, and if they're like one of the leaders, they last maybe 10 before they start to go, well, I'm going to start teaching this crazy belief right here, and then it starts to go like really downhill from there. And then maybe if they're lucky, they get like a Don Preston or William Bell, where it's like, I've been a full preterist for ever since 1973 when I met Max King, and he told me blah 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 blah, and I said, "Ooh, that sounds perfect. I should make a cult out of that." You know, because I mean, I lasted only 5 years, so
5 years, that's longer than I lasted. I only lasted about 15 months, man. I moved in it, through it, and on my way out. But then again, I never had any temptation either to, become a teacher or anything. But I could see where that temptation would keep somebody in the movement longer. Do you see that?
It probably kept me in longer because I mean, I was trying to manage this big giant group on Facebook. Like, it was like a Bible group, and that's the reason Don Preston liked me so much, because I had this big group that he could like get on and like kind of evangelize to and tell people about full preterism. Because when I was being a full preterist, I was teaching it, right? And like finally I had a change of heart and I was like, oh, I gotta get rid of this. So I got rid of that entire group. Like I was like, okay, I was wrong on this, and you guys should all just not follow anything that I said on eschatology ever, because I was completely, totally wrong. And like everyone got pissed because, oh no, Lance is being humble. He's telling people that he was wrong about something. How dare you? Like, and then you'll if you read the comments about what Don says about me, I'm the most arrogant, prideful man in the whole world. But then why did I get rid of a whole entire group to keep with my convictions? Like, really? Like, okay. Yeah, if people can't tell, I've got bad blood with Don, so.
And I knew that because your book, when I read your book, it's called Hope Resurrected. If anybody, I'm sure you still give out PDF copies.
Yes, I give it for free. I don't, if people buy it, I'm like, that's cool. If you want to buy it, that's great. But I give it for free most of the time. If you just talk to me, I will give you like my email and I'll give it to you for free. So
I was reading that book, and it was really a lot of great stuff in there. And it just basically really stresses that historic aspect, historic Christianity, which is pretty cool. But that's one of the issues that I've been hitting on from the very get-go for actually since I left full preterism is, historic faith, the historic faith, the historic faith. And I thought you really ravaged Don's view of theology in general. You just gutted him from one right up the middle. And I can imagine where he would have gotten very, very upset over that process. I also read one of the debates that you did with him. It was posted to, I think you posted it to one of your WordPress blogs.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very excellent. And so he didn't want to really do a lot of interacting with you. He's been talking, about, I'm going to, refute William Gregg, who I don't really know much about. He's going to refute this guy. He's going to refute that guy. It seems like he's kind of got his hands full. He's kind of slowing his gears a little bit now, where he's got, I understand the man's got some health problems, and I don't wish that on anyone. I hope he recovers. But at the same time, I can see what you're saying, where once, when he goes, it's going to be hard to fill those shoes, because he's been at the forefront of the movement for many, many years. But I could see where he would take your opposition to heart, because you really did do some damage to his position.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I started out really nice with Don, actually. Like, people cannot say that I started out like really mean with Don. Like, I used to be very respectful, very nice, But the moment you start lying about me or accusing me of just like some of the most bizarre things, like I'm just like I had a surgery, right? I've got leg problems, so I had a surgery, so I had to take some drugs for pain pills. Well, somehow this gets back to Dawn, and somehow the full preterist community ends up, because I did defend this one guy that was I'm not gonna say his name, but he's an addict and he's been trying to get off for years. So I defended this guy one time because I was like, I was on pills and I was like, it is hard to stop them sometimes. Like once you get on them, it's kind of hard to stop after a while. But I was able to stop, but this guy wasn't able to. But I defended them because they were talking crap about him. And I'm like, no, that's not right. Like, you know, but somehow this turned into Lance is a druggie and Lance does drugs and Lance is on popping pain pills all the time. And it's like, okay, like how did that come up? And just I've been accused of all sorts of crazy stuff. And it usually ends up turning out that it's the full predators is projecting their sinful behaviors onto me that they're actually doing. So, that's what happens a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I've also noticed, I know we were talking about this, I think in our test podcast, we were talking about this, and I've often noticed that it's really, really hard when you're dealing with hyperpreterists. It's really, really hard to get the conversation to stay in that channel of, just the arguments. It seems like, the conversations almost invariably derail and it becomes about, like people and personalities, or it becomes about like some collateral issue that not really too many people are interested in, like the whole, Van Tillianism versus Clarkianism. It's like, who cares about Van Til and about Clark? It's like, conversation just gets derailed so easily. Do you see
the majority of the time what's happening is they cannot defend their position, so what they do is they try to find whatever they can find on you or your personality, and then they try to hit you with that, because at the end of the day sometimes that's more effective to try to convince people, because people are stupid. like I don't mean to be a pessimist, but like people in general can be kind of stupid. I can too, like we all can, but like people's biases come out and then they're like, well, I kind of like that John Watson guy. He seems like a nice guy. Like he's talking crap about that Conley guy. That Conley must be a bad guy because I like John. He's cool, so that kind of happens. But yeah, like I can see it. Like most of the time, I have tried so many times to have just a civil discussion with a full preterist. Like I even try to get it in person. I'll be like, hey, let's talk like you and me are talking right now, right? And they refuse. They absolutely refuse. And I think it's because like the last time I did that, like the dude was like, crap, you're not a bad guy. You're actually a pretty nice guy. He had to admit, like, you're a nice guy, Lance. I'm like, yeah, thanks, I guess. And then it was like, dang it, like, you might be right. Like, had to admit, like, you might have a point. Like, I'm going to sound stupid if I say this, like, on a live discussion feed that, like, your point that you just made, like, makes absolutely zero sense. Like, I'm just going to sound like a stupid flat earther. Like, I mean, it's gotten to that point sometimes when I have live discussions with these people where it's like, okay, why do you believe this? Like, and I'm listening to them, I'm hearing them out, and they're just like, they start to realize, like, damn, this is really inconsistent. This is really not, because I'll a lot of times what I'll do is I will talk to them and I will come at it from their perspective. And I'll just go like, all right, so you believe this, right? You believe that the elect were elected in 7880. They're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, so that's cool. All right, thanks for telling me that. All right, so how are you part of the elect? If the elect were elected in 7880, because you can only elect one time, because that's how the Greek works. They're like, well, I think there's a new election. I'm like, where's that in the Bible? Shoot, I guess it's not in the Bible. Oh, dang it. It comes down to that kind of stuff. And you don't even have to be mean, but it's just like, they, it's what it is. It's dealing with a cult. Like you're dealing with a cult mindset. So
definitely. Yeah, it's a cult, all right. And I don't know, man. I think it's, I think you've presented a pretty fair and honest picture of what the movement is and where it's going. And it seems like, seems like the movement will go into remission from time to time. Like it'll be really strong and it'll be buoyant, and, you'll really see people take off. And then all of a sudden it has a tendency to peter out a lot. I've seen it happen a few times over the years. And that's one of the reasons why I got out of apologetics around 2011, because I felt I had said everything I could say, and I saw the movement begin to peter out. And it just has a tendency to do that. It goes into remission, but then it pops up again in through some other teacher, or through some book, or through some debate. It has a tendency to do that. But I've seen it as the lowest point, and it seems like it's really doing poorly now. Do you get that same impression?
Yeah, I mean, so I was looking. I mean, I've been kind of compiling a history of full preterism. I've got it in my book too, but so it starts off with Robert Townley basically, and then it just dies off for a long time, and then Max King. I don't know where he found it, but I'm sure he read Robert Townley. He had to have, or something. He had to have come up with this somehow. I know that he read Atheist Bible Critics, and he was like, wow, they got good points. The Jesus seminars, those have been debunked now, but back then, during his time, they were pretty good arguments still. They weren't great arguments, but they were they were kind of fair arguments about the historical Jesus and all that. And so I'm sure Max King read that and he was like, oh crap, I'm a fundamentalist preacher from the Unitarian Church, and I don't know what to do, right? So, he already denied Jesus as God since he's a Unitarian. So he's just like, all right, well, I got to fix the resurrection of the dead, and I got to fix this. So how do I fix this? Oh, well, I'll just say Jesus came back in 70 AD, because that's when the temple fell. And I can kind of see, I don't trust these church father guys, but sometimes this Eusebius guy says that this happened and this fulfilled Matthew 24 in some respects. So I'm going to just say that it fulfilled it all. And I'll also say Matthew 25 got fulfilled. Oh, and the resurrection of the dead. Dang it. That again. I got to change that too, right? So he spiritualizes it to nonsensical degrees. And which I won't say Max King's the only one that does that. I've seen other people mess that up because they read spiritual, and so they think it's a Star Wars Force Ghost body or something. But what it really is Paul's saying that the physical body is going to be empowered by the Holy Spirit. That's why he says pneumatico soma, because it's a literal reading of that as Holy Spirit body, which it's the Holy Spirit reviving and empowering the body to immortality. That's what it is. And Acts 24 says that it's going to be for everybody, just and unjust. So, what do you do about that? And that's why the Greeks in Acts 17 on Mars Hill were like, whoa, Paul, that's crazy, bro. Because they were when the Greeks heard the resurrection of the dead, they thought, oh God, they thought that the release from the body, the soul releasing from the body, was a good thing. That was an escape. It was an escape from the body. It was Cartesian thought. And Paul's telling them, no, you're going to go back into your body. So instead of this idea that it's going to be a good body, they were like, oh no, I'm going to be like a zombie. So that's why they were disgusted, because they had seen, everyone had seen death. They'd seen corpses. They'd all seen this. So they were like, oh God, no, that sounds terrible. And Paul's like, no, it's not going to be like that, But anyways, yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I think those some great theological points you brought out. And man, I guess we'll just have to keep on monitoring the movement. I think we got enough for a podcast today, and we can come back at another point and tackle it some more. But you have any last words you wanted to say about the movement, about the state of the disunion, as it were, or anything you want to say to anybody out there that's maybe watching this?
Well, if you're on the fence about full preterism, or if you're on the fence about preterism in general, I think that's a good thing. And I think if you're a full preterist, you should rethink what you're doing, because there are so many inconsistencies and so many issues that anybody can bring up with you. It's just, they're very obvious once you think about it. And if you're honest with yourself, you will try to like rethink your positions about everything, right? Like right now, personally, I'm reading David Bentley Hart, and I'm looking into eternal hellfire and all of that. Like, is it temporal or is it eternal? David Bentley Hart covers it, so I'm kind of reading it, kind of checking what my presuppositions are, stuff like that, you know. And I think if you're a full preterist watching this, you should do that too. You should be willing to be like, okay, what if I'm wrong? Like, this sounds good, but what if I'm wrong? What if the time texts don't all say what I want them to say? What about this contradiction? What about this like implication? Like there might like if you think there might be an implication like, hey, I might not be one of the elect anymore. What the heck? You know, like maybe you should think about that kind of stuff. Like I cover that in my book. I'm planning to so Steve Gregg and I talked to him a while back and I read his book and he made a good he made some good time text arguments. And so I've been thinking I might add time text more into my book later. So if there's a new edition, I'm gonna do that. But I'm probably gonna steal some of Steve Gregg's arguments. Honestly, I'll remake them into some of my own because I don't agree with everything. But yeah, I mean they were good arguments though from a partial preterist perspective. But like I'm a late date partial preterist, by the way. Like they call it late date partial preterism idealism, and yeah. I kind of take that position. But I don't think that anybody's a heretic if you're an early date partial preterist like Kenneth Gentry or a premillennialist. Like as long as you are not a dispensationalist or a full preterist, you're like it's not heretical. Right. So.
Well,
yeah.
Well, that's great, man. Well, thanks for joining me, and we'll get this in the can, and then I'll post this to my channel, and then you'll get the link too. But anyways, thanks again. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. You too, Lance, and we'll see you around.
All right.